Hello friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story where OP, managing a local video game store, deals with an annoying customer who refuses to accept the policy of requiring items to be seen in person for quotes, leading to a confrontation where OP stands firm and asks the customer to leave. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. I know the guy who owns this place. I manage a locally owned store where we deal in used goods of the video game variety. Being a small business dealing in used goods, we have certain policies in place for a reason. Most of our customers understand and don't harass us about them, but not this guy. We'll call him AC for annoying customer. AC enters our store and walks up to the front counter where my associate and myself are working. We greet AC and he asks how much we pay out for an Xbox One. I explain our store policy, which is that we need to see all items in person to give out any quotes. Ignoring what I just stated, AC proceeds to tell us about how he really doesn't want to sell it. It's just taking up space and not being used, so he asks for a price range. I again explain to AC how we need to see the item and don't give quotes because there are quite a few things that go into the numbers we give out that we need to see the condition for. I again state that we'd be more than happy to take a look at it if AC just brings it into the store. AC starts to get upset. He raises his voice a bit and says, "Look, I know you can give me a number. It's already in your computer. Just tell me what the screen says for an Xbox One." I try to explain to him that our system doesn't work that way and that we look everything up manually in real time, so I can't give a number without seeing the items in question. AC doesn't let me finish explaining and interrupts, asking me to just look it up on eBay or whatever and give him the lowest we'd offer. By this time, I'm done trying to be nice. I tend to get people trying to get me to be a pushover, and it really bothers me. So I tell him once more that we have our policies for a reason and everyone is treated the same. AC then starts going off about how I'm being rude and denying him a service. Being highly annoyed, I inform him that I have a right to refuse service and that he can just not bring his items in because we'll no longer be buying anything from him. AC starts chuckling to himself. AC then says, "Oh man, you really messed up now. You don't even know. I know the guy who owns this place. You're the manager here, yeah?" I proceed to tell him yes. AC asks for my name and keeps peddling off about how he's going to contact them and how I've messed up big time about refusing him service. I then tell him I have the right to refuse service to anyone and that he's no longer welcome in the store and to please leave. AC has to have one final word in. "You won't see me again in this store because you won't have a job anymore," he says as he finally leaves the store. I proceeded to send a picture of the guy from our camera footage to the owner, who I know quite well. He tells me he's never met the guy. Edit. In the past, we've had people get upset and leave us bad reviews for lying about quotes. When someone describes their item as pristine condition, it more often than not is not in pristine condition when they bring it in, so the quote we gave for a pristine item is no longer valid. We look up everything at the moment it's brought in, so the amounts are always varying. Sometimes a game spikes in value, which may or may not go to a customer's favor. Sometimes a controller isn't working or it's a third-party brand we don't take. They may be missing cords, etc. So we have a strict policy about seeing items in person. This is posted on our floor with our hours as well as our online site. When he demanded a number, you should have said $0 and then told him it might go up if you could see the item. And our second story. Entitled Ex-Landlord demand I leave behind the washer and dryer I paid for. So for the past 2 years, I, 25-year-old male, lived in a small apartment building. The apartment didn't have laundry room for the building when I moved in, but did come with hookups for washer and dryer in the apartment, so I too bought them myself because I work for a wildlife sanctuary and I get pretty dirty during my work. Just the other day, I had to chase down and wrestle one of our wild boars, Bacon. We didn't name him that, he came with that name, who loved to escape his pen and thinks it's funny to play chase. It got me completely dirty. I was covered in grass stains and mud, so I very much need them. My boyfriend and I just got engaged, and since my lease was up, I moved into his house with him. I finished moving everything out of my old apartment yesterday, and I thought nothing about taking my washer and dryer with me as I had bought them. My boyfriend had some, but they were old and kept breaking down and were costing too much to have fixed. Well, I woke up this morning to multiple missed calls from my old landlord. I left my phone number and new address in case any mail was delivered to my old place. I called him back and he asked why the washer and dryer were gone. I explained that I took them with me. He started freaking out, saying that he put the place had a washer and dryer in the ad for the place. Apparently, I've raised the rent to them. He started to demand I bring them back because the new clients he has set up to move and had already signed the lease and are not interested in the place without them. Even threatened to call the police if I don't take them back. I got angry and told him that I would do no such thing, reminding him that they belong to me. I bought them, and I still had the receipts from when I bought them, as well as texts from him when I moved that explaining I was buying them myself. He again threatens to call the police. I told him to do it and see what happened, and hung up at that point. Personally, I don't think I'm in the wrong. I bought them and they weren't cheap, so I feel I have the right to take them. My boyfriend's on my side, but today the coworker said they think I the a-hole for not telling the landlord I was taking them. In my opinion, that should have been obvious. I paid for them. Why would I leave them? Well, my landlord went through with calling the police because the next day they showed up. Honestly, nothing really noteworthy happened. I explained to them what was going on and showed them the receipt for the washer and dryer as well as the text from the landlord I had from when I told him I was buying them. The cops took my statement and left. My boyfriend's father's a lawyer and he's going to be contacting my landlord and sorting everything out. He advised me not to respond to said landlord anymore for the time being. You didn't do anything wrong. Your landlord's an idiot, as is whoever told you you did the wrong thing. You took your belongings you own. And our next story. Boss tries to fire me. So this happened several years ago at a company that I worked for. I was hired into a position there and worked for a woman we shall call Carol. She was the worst manager I'd ever worked for. She really knew very little about the department, couldn't figure out how to read or generate reports to show our department statistics, and was way more concerned with being everyone's friend than their boss. I was very good at the administrative side of things, and although it wasn't my job, she eventually got me to start writing her reports for her that she would present at the weekly management meetings with all the department heads to create and evaluate new sales campaigns, even conducting interviews and writing up employees who got into trouble. Basically, I started doing her job for her, and all the while she promised me that there would be a new opening soon in a higher position and that all the extra work I was doing would be how she would justify to the higher-ups that I should get it. One day, her boss's boss was doing a walkthrough of our department and called me out for some poor productivity on my accounts. Instead of explaining to him that I actually had permission to scale back on my daily accounts in favor of my new responsibilities, she proceeded to ream me out in front of everyone and promised him that it would be handled. I realized then that everything she told me was a lie. I stopped doing her work for her and focused on my own and went back to being the highest producer in the department. She got upset and tried to write me up for disobedience when I told her I wouldn't come in early and do extra work for her again. That was my last straw. I sent her an email with my 2 weeks' notice and CC'd my personal email account so I'd have a copy of it. She replied, "Received." She sat there all morning huffing and puffing and eventually pulled me into the side room and told me to hand in my keys and leave right then, that she wasn't going to pay me for 2 more weeks when I wouldn't do what she said. She didn't realize that when an employee gives their 2 weeks' notice and you fill the position or ask them to leave before the time is up, you still have to pay them out. So I got basically 2 free weeks of pay that I didn't have to work for. The GM of the company was on vacation that week, and when he got back, he was PO'd that the highest producer was gone. He asked her what happened, and she lied about what had happened and said I was grossly insubordinate, and that's why I had to leave that day. Unfortunately, over the next 6 months, the department went downhill so badly that her job was on the line. She reached out to me to see if I would come back and help her fix it. I said I would if she apologized, gave me a raise and some other perks. She agreed, but when she went to HR to get the contract written up, the GM blocked it and said they would never rehire someone who was let go for being grossly insubordinate. She couldn't admit the truth, so I didn't return. Last I heard, she was fired shortly after. And our last story. The neighbor built a house next door illegally. I recently got a new neighbor who bought the property next door and decided to tear down the existing house. His plan was to build 2 new slim homes on the lot. At first, I thought it was exciting to see some new development in the neighborhood. However, things started to go downhill quickly. When construction began, they dug so close to my property line that the foundation of my fence began to crack and crumble. Before long, the fence was leaning noticeably toward his side. Concerned, I approached him to discuss the issue. "Hey, I've noticed that the excavation's causing my fence to break. Can you please make sure your crew's careful around the property line?" I asked politely. He shrugged it off. "That's just how construction goes. We'll fix anything that's damaged," he said dismissively. But the problems didn't stop there. Despite my mother's kindness toward him, allowing access to our property when needed, agreeing on deadlines, and being generally accommodating, he was incredibly disrespectful. He would leave garbage on our lawn, and several times we found him wandering in our backyard without any prior notice. We only discovered him back there because our dog started barking like crazy. One afternoon, my mother caught him walking through our front yard, entering through our gate to get to his construction site because the fence had been torn down. She felt uneasy and disrespected, especially when he asked to use our electricity for his power tools. "Excuse me, but I'd appreciate it if you'd let us know before coming onto our property," she told him. He waved her off. "It's just for a moment. Don't worry about it," he replied, not even making eye contact. Fed up with his behavior, I decided to step in. We drafted a simple agreement outlining that he would put up a barrier between our properties and build a new fence by August 1st. He agreed and even signed the document. However, August 1st came and went, still no fence. For over 2 months, there was open access between our properties, and his workers continued to trespass and leave debris everywhere. I confronted him again. "You've breached our contract by not cleaning up your garbage and failing to provide a plan for the new fence. This isn't acceptable." He smirked. "Contracts, plans, you're making a big deal out of nothing. We'll get to it when we get to it." Meanwhile, his house was rapidly taking shape, now about 75% complete, and alarmingly close to where my fence used to stand. In fact, it looked like his new home was less than a foot away from our property line. I was also worried that when he finally decided to rebuild the fence, it would encroach on our land. With less than a foot of space, I couldn't see how he could construct a fence without it spilling onto our side. The final straw was when I noticed more garbage piling up on my front lawn, remnants of additional fencing his workers had torn down. Feeling utterly ignored and disrespected, I decided it was time to take legal action. I contacted a lawyer who specializes in property disputes and explained the entire situation. He then said, "It sounds like your neighbor's not only violating local ordinances, but also infringing on your property rights. Let's look into the permits and zoning laws." After some research, my lawyer discovered that my neighbor did not have the legal right to build his home so close to our property line. There are regulations requiring a certain amount of setback between structures and the property boundary for safety and privacy reasons. A few weeks later, city inspectors came out to assess the situation. They measured the distance between the new structure and our property line and confirmed that he was in violation of the setback requirements. A city official scheduled a meeting with both of us. During the meeting, the official said, "After reviewing the case, we found that your construction is in violation of city codes. You'll be required to move the structure to comply with the mandatory setbacks." My neighbor was furious. "Do you know how much money I've invested in this? You can't make me move it." The official remained firm. Failure to comply will result in a hefty fine and potential legal action. You'll need to submit a new plan that adheres to the regulations. Seeing no way out, my neighbor had to undertake the costly process of moving the partially built house to the correct position on his lot. It was a massive undertaking that delayed his project by months and undoubtedly cost him a significant amount of money. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.